If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that more often than not, doing like kitschy nicknames involving the number of people or things involved is usually a little lame. Like the only real caveat to that is the real Fab Five. Like that forever will go down as an okay usage. My girl group in high school, we called ourselves the Fab Five. We had an entire ad in the yearbook that said the Fab Five, and I hate myself for it. It also said Jesse Juicy Benson. Those are things I can't take back. That's my legacy at Thunder Ridge High School because I loved Juicy Couture so much. Juicy Jesse of the Fab Five. Those two things are two of the more obnoxious things of my history. But we'll move on for that. Bottom line, don't attach names and numbers together into groupings. But the ACC missed that memo, and their yearbook will say the Magnificent Seven. And it is the Magnificent Seven of Florida State, Miami, Clemson, UNC, North Carolina State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech, who are reportedly looking into just how airtight the ACC's grant of rights agreement is, because they would like to explore leaving the conference because they would like to make a whole lot more money in conferences like perhaps the great It Just Means More SEC or the continuously expanding Big Ten, who is adding USC and UCLA. But the grant of rights in the ACC goes through 2036. And so as of now, if these teams left the conference, they would still be responsible in paying the ACC not just a $120 million exit fee, but they would have to give them still the rights to all of their home games based on this grant of rights experience in the ACC. It's not going to fly. So they're exploring avenues out. Another option would be perhaps doing a unequal revenue distribution amongst those teams in the SECs or the ACC. So they would get more than like a Syracuse or a Boston College. But those schools aren't going to like that. We love conference summer meetings, and we get stories like this.
I love it. This is my favorite recurring summertime story is conference realignment, because it just reminds you who's really in power. Everybody in the FBS is not in control. The FBS is being run 20 programs, maybe, probably closer to 12 or 15. And how many of those do you have in your conference? Because that determines how stable you are. And the ACC is finding this out right now. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 already know it. And the ACC is now learning this lesson. And my thought is, because of the rights deal, 2036 you said, right, is when that is up. My thought is those 7 are trying to find a way to get out of that deal by forming their own conference. I'm not sure. I hadn't looked at all the papers. Nobody has explained it to me. But I wonder if there's an out for those teams if they say go independent or form a different conference, not necessarily join an existing conference. So the move would be then, hey, let's split, leave the ACC and become the new ACC, Magnificent Seven, whatever we want to call it. And then once we form that new thing, then we'll be able to branch out and do some other stuff. And by branch out, I mean, say, hey, we'll be willing to join the SEC or the Big Ten, what have you. Those are the 7 biggest names in that conference from a football standpoint. Football drives realignment. But really, that's the biggest 4. 3 or 4 with Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and maybe Virginia Tech. Like, so that's generous, a big stretch, but that is 3 of them then. It's only 3. And when those 3 decide we don't want to be a part of this anymore, you're not giving us enough money, what can you do if you're Wake Forest or Georgia Tech or Syracuse or Boston College other than hold on for dear life? That's it. Right. But because the TV deal goes through 2036, that makes them much, much more stable than a Pac-12 or a Big 12 right now. And so there's the report that I saw, I listened to Brett McMurphy. He was on the podcast earlier this week talking about this and some other things. He said Washington and Oregon have already been vetted and pre-approved to join the Big Ten. What they're waiting on, though, the Big Ten and the ESPN don't want to be seen as conference destroyers. So they're waiting on Arizona State, Colorado to leave and go to the Big 12 before they come in and finish everything off. So they want somebody else to make the move first, and then they'll make the move. And when you think about recent realignment with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten, those schools were the proactive ones. It wasn't the conferences reaching out. It was the individual schools saying, hey, we want to come to you.
Well, they also have to legally portray it to be as such.
Do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the pieces with the whole ACC piece is the SEC cannot and does not want to be in a situation where it looks like they were the pursuers. It has to be on the university, and thus exploring this grant of rights validity, and if there is any way to get out of that is what's pivotal for the ACC. But you bring up a good point in that all of this is about self-preservation now. Like, that is college athletics and conference realignment at this point. Self-preservation. Will you be a part of whatever this new big dog landscape looks like? And you now have the SEC at 14 schools with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma coming in. You have the Big Ten expanding. The last time we saw a 16-team conference was the good old Western Athletic Conference 25 years ago. It's the 25-year anniversary of when the WAC, it was thought it could be too big to fail in college athletics. Instead, not enough pieces of the pie to go around. It breaks off into the Mountain West. Obviously, that's a different level compared to what the Big Ten and the SEC are attempting to do right now. And all of those dominoes that you mentioned play a big part in these schools for the ACC to potentially land in. What does the Big 12 look like if potentially Colorado and Arizona schools go to the Big 12, UW and Oregon go to the Big 10? Where does everything filter? And that provides an avenue for Memphis. And there was a very loose report, and I don't give a whole lot of credence to any of these right now because no one knows. Like, this is just a hodgepodge of schools trying to, again, self-preserve themselves in the landscape of college athletics. But could there be a home in a new Big 12? Could Memphis be one of the scragglers that ends on latching onto the Big 12 in an attempt to still be in a not as powerful conference, but at least a player in the game? And that's all you want to be. You're not going to be in the SEC. You're not going to be in the Big Ten. They are going to own college sports, but you want to still be able to be a player.
Honestly,
I know. I think it's a reach.
It's a reach, and it's a reach that does you no good. I don't think it does you any good to be in a diminished Big 12 or a diminished ACC without Texas, Oklahoma, or without a Florida State, Miami, Clemson, because then what it looks like, it looks like the American, and it looks like Conference USA before that. Like that's what it ends up looking like, where you are back with the Cincinnatis and the Houstons and the Central Floridas of the world. Don't get me wrong, that is better than where you are. But unless you can find a way to jump into the two power conferences right now, which is the Big Ten and the SEC, you're kind of just out there floundering about in the wilderness. You are. Now, there's more money. Don't get me wrong. It's way more money in the Big 12 than there is in the American. But even that money pales in comparison to what the Big Ten and the SEC are about to start paying out. I think the Big Ten is paying out $80 million per school this year. And in a couple of years, sometime within the next 5, they're going to be paying out $100 million per school. Like, if you're in the Big 12, sure, you'll make $40 million, $45 million per school, which is worlds better than $5 million in the American. And I get that, but it's not as good as what you would hope. And there's no guarantee that it's going to even be that by the time it's all said and done, because you could go to the Big 12 and then Cincinnati and the rest of them look around and say, you know what? It would be better for us to be in the ACC. The Magnificent Seven to split. We'll go join the ACC. And now you're in the Big 12 with who?